Welcome to the AI Summit held in partnership with BIA and Wired. We're here to talk about the game-changing impact of artificial intelligence on Middle Eastern economies and societies, and how AI can be harnessed today to create the resilient businesses of tomorrow. I'm Noor Swade, General Partner at Global Ventures, which has invested in over 27 regional startups. For many of the young businesses we have backed, AI is built into their very DNA. Yet for more established players in the corporate world, it may not be completely obvious how to transform and create completely new revenue streams through the power of AI. And that's what today's summit will address: how businesses, old and new, can ride the wave of AI and not be left behind. The opportunity, of course, is vast. Artificial intelligence is set to contribute a staggering $320 billion to Middle East economies by 2030, led by the UAE and Saudi Arabia. I think this highlights just how transformative these technologies will be. Our investments in some of them, such as Arrow Labs, which uses AI and machine learning to optimize productivity across field workforces, is just one example of how companies can scale from the region into global markets using AI, and how the region is turning into a hub. We're honored then to welcome His Excellency Omar Al Alama, the UAE's Minister of AI, the first such ministerial appointment globally, to talk through the profound implications AI has on business and society. Your Excellency, over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency Khalid Al Huraimel, it's an absolute pleasure being with all of you here today in this wonderful convening of thought leaders, of change makers, of individuals who are taking it upon themselves to create a better world for everyone. We are in the midst of a big transformation. It's also known as Industry 4.0. We have seen digital adoption take a quantum leap across companies, industries, governments, and communities as well. And the unprecedented nature of 2020 and 2021, the global health pandemic that has been a catalyst for important breakthroughs in digital transformation and next generation technologies like, for example, artificial intelligence, means that we can no longer take AI as a vague experimental research concept. AI already has profound implications on the way we do business, the way we live, interact with each other. And every cutting-edge innovation that is integral to every part of our lives today incorporates AI at some level. So the question we might ask ourselves is, how can we build a responsible AI-driven future? How can we capture all of the benefits of AI from all of the sectors that it's being used and serve the people that we as governments are meant to serve, and companies as well? How do you mitigate the risks that might stem out of unintended consequences that might harm people in artificial intelligence? Here in the UAE, we are actively developing a digital economy that reinforces the country's smart infrastructure and ensures digital readiness and business continuity under all circumstances. We also believe that the digital economy is a key driver for our nation's growth, and that it will spur the development of several new knowledge-based and value-added sectors to maintain the UAE's competitiveness in the future economy. As per our national AI strategy of 2031, we intend to become amongst the world leaders in artificial intelligence by 2031. And we want to also create new economic and social opportunities for all segments of society. This can generate up to 355 billion dirhams in economic growth across that period. We are also developing a roadmap to become a fast adopter of emerging AI technologies and to attract AI talent and also experiment with new technologies in a sophisticated ecosystem. We have many examples of how AI successfully has been initiated across government departments and have had a clear mandate to ensure that these deployments serve people and also cater to certain needs that we have. I'll give you a few examples. The first is we're looking at non-controversial deployments of artificial intelligence in fields like for example, healthcare, where we can diagnose certain diseases that are widespread and that actually take a lot of lives per year, like tuberculosis. We're looking at oil and gas, for example, to ensure that our extraction of this natural resource is done in the most efficient way possible and generates the biggest return. We're also looking at artificial intelligence in logistics and in improving our infrastructure. And then finally, we're trying to improve our cybersecurity using artificial intelligence. All of this is going to spur a new revolution in the UAE and ensure that we can export that know-how to the rest of the world. But what we think about when we look at all of this is our motto to developing artificial intelligence in the UAE, which is BRAIN, building a responsible artificial intelligence nation. Responsible AI, a responsible deployment of AI, and the responsible use of AI is extremely important for the UAE moving forward. We want to ensure that the deployments of AI today do not impact future generations or current generations in any way that is not optimal and not positive. At this point, I would like to commend BIA, the Middle East sustainability pioneer, for organizing this event and bringing together leading experts in the field to discuss how to achieve our aspirations. It's interesting to learn that BIA's strategy lies in merging sustainability with digitalization and looking at these two pillars as the two main twin pillars of a modern economy. The new headquarters of BIA is the region's first AI integrated office of the future and will be one of the smartest buildings in the Middle East. So it's very exciting to see the AI use cases there that are being developed by Johnson Controls and Microsoft and other companies as well. The building showcases how technology and sustainability can be leveraged to realize resource and energy efficiency, which is providing an inspiring environment for employees and visitors. Finally, while AI will play an outsized role in enhancing our economies and our industries as well, we also need to consider the impact that it will have on augmenting human capacity, improving quality of life, and amplifying our effectiveness in solving the world's greatest challenges. I look forward to the productive insights and discussions that many accomplished speakers present here today are going to talk about, and hope that this discussion is going to lead to a lot of action in the sustainability and environmental space and beyond. Thank you once again for having me, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I'd now like to introduce Khalid Al-Kharimel, Group CEO of environmental management company BIA, to describe his vision for how businesses can embrace AI.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to BIA's first AI Summit, held in partnership with Wired Middle East. Let me begin by first thanking His Excellency Omar bin Sultan Al Ulama, Minister of State of Artificial Intelligence, Digital Economy and Remote Work Applications, for joining us as our keynote speaker. As governments and companies across all sectors continue to navigate during these exceptional times, AI is clearly an important driver to achieve our goals and objectives. These are exciting times, and we have only scratched the surface of what AI can accomplish. For BIA, as regional leaders in sustainability, we have embraced digitalization in all that we do, which has led us to be pioneers in our industry. Through a diverse range of verticals, from waste management and renewable energy to sustainable transport and consultancy, we have achieved many firsts in our industry. However, to lead in the new economy, we believe we have to invest more in digital, which is what BIA has done aggressively in the last few years. We have established our own digital ventures, Evotech and WeLife, and digitalized our existing operations and businesses towards our vision of a sustainable quality of life. With this AI Summit, BIA and Wired Middle East have gathered the industry experts who represent cross-section of business, academia, and government. I would like to thank all of our distinguished speakers for being part of this event and for contributing to this important dialogue. To our viewers, thank you for being here today, and I hope this event offers you inspiration, knowledge, and actionable insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalid, and welcome everyone to the AI Summit. I'm Ben Flanagan from Wired. We have an all-star lineup of speakers today to map out the future of artificial intelligence. It's a deeply relevant topic, except topic doesn't quite go far enough. That's because AI is having a profound influence on almost every area of our lives. And if it's not today, it sure will be tomorrow. Certainly here at Wired, the pervasive influence of AI is apparent in pretty much every story that we publish. It has implications, good and bad, for business, society, governments, humanity itself. This summit has a focus on the former, how these technologies will help build the most resilient businesses of the 21st century. We'll examine how that journey may look. So thank you to our partners at BIA for what will be an engaging discussion for business leaders in the Middle East and beyond.
Thank you, Ben. Like you say, AI is at the cutting edge of many of today's most prominent tech businesses. At Global Ventures, our portfolio includes the likes of healthcare company Proximi, which allows clinicians to virtually share skills during live surgical procedures, online food discovery and delivery platform El Menus, and business credit card startup Tribal. These are just some of the many companies that we've invested in that are all embracing AI and leveraging what AI can do for young companies and large corporates to really move the needle on how technology transforms society. It's a diverse mix that we invest in, but AI is one of the key things they have in common. It helps them really drive new insights from data, insights that we thought impossible just a decade ago. It's joining dots we didn't even know could be joined and maybe we didn't even know existed. But the potential of AI is more obvious in some businesses than others. If your organization is decades or even centuries old, how can it transform from within and prove resilient in 2021 and beyond? Here, we're joined by representatives of Microsoft and Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence in Abu Dhabi to discuss how AI stands to fuel the future of the Middle East.
Hello and welcome to this BIA and Wired panel on how AI is fueling the future of the Middle East. We're going to look today about how AI can be a tool for rapid transformation in the region and how companies old and new can avoid getting left behind. Some of the forecasts are truly staggering. AI is set to contribute some $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030. That's trillion with a T. I'd argue that Middle East organizations and governments can stand to grab an oversized proportion of that. But how do they do it? Well, in this discussion, I'm reminded of a film last year called We Need to Talk About AI, which argued that the existential threat posed by AI could actually outweigh the benefits. Well, don't worry. We're not going to talk about that Terminator sort of scenario today. But what we are going to talk about is how Middle East companies can seize the opportunities posed by this technology. Because for some, not doing so, arguably, does pose an existential threat. So yes, we do need to talk about AI, and today we are. I will introduce our esteemed panel who will be talking about this. We have Khaled Al-Rahman, who is Group CEO of BIA. Welcome, Khaled. Syed Hashish, who's General Manager of Microsoft UAE, and also Professor Li Song, who is Deputy Department Chair of Machine Learning at the Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence in Abu Dhabi. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Khaled, I'd like to kick off the conversation with you, if that's okay, by asking, what might be surprising some people, why is BIA, an environmental management company, hosting a panel discussion, an AI summit? What's the link there, and how does AI fit into your vision of merging sustainability and digitization?
First of all, hello everyone. It's a pleasure being here among such distinguished guests, and it's a pleasure for BIA to host this first AI summit. As you know, the world currently is in a sustainability crisis that we are battling on multiple fronts, such as waste generation, environmental protection, and preservation, and tackling carbon emissions, to name a few. At BIA, we realize that sustainable solutions to these issues can be accelerated and amplified through adopting new technologies such as AI and digitalization of operations, allowing us to make more meaningful impact in these areas. AI allows us to scale up our operations, become more efficient, predict sustainability and waste trends, allow us to reduce our carbon footprint. This is how our strategy, based on the two pillars of sustainability and digitalization, was born. We wanted to pioneer an environment that combines these two elements to improve the quality of life for all. Although people know us mostly for waste management, today BIA Group has become a diversified group in many areas, including energy, energy business, transportation, and also we have founded 2 digital ventures, including Evotech and Relight. Therefore, because sustainability is so vital and because AI is so impactful, we wanted to hold this summit to support others in this journey and share the learnings and expertise we have gained along the way to encourage more rapid and successful deployment of AI across the region and beyond.
Thank you very much, Khaled. That's a great introduction, I think, to how AI can really transform all businesses. I think, Syed, moving on to you, obviously Microsoft, its business is helping others do that. Tell us, I mean, how from your point of view do you see the opportunity in the Middle East for companies to really leapfrog to this new technology and transform? And what's holding them back?
Thank you, Ben, and good morning, everyone. And let me echo Khaled. It's a privilege to be part of this esteemed panel. I want to thank BIA as well for driving it and setting it up. So look, at Microsoft, as you said, Ben, we're part of this ecosystem, and we do believe that there's a great opportunity for countries in the Middle East to leapfrog in the adoption and innovation of technologies like AI. So we've seen throughout the recent history many examples of how countries from emerging regions that have leapfrogged when it came to technology. For example, you could see in Africa when with the mobile technologies, Africa went from a connectivity perspective did not start by putting copper lines. They leapfrogged and they started by 4G, and along with that came also innovation that was driven out of the continent when it came to mobile payments, for example. And we've seen how much innovation was driven from the continent. So we've seen those examples, and I believe that AI is no different. I think also AI, we have a great opportunity for the countries in the Middle East to leapfrog. I want to specifically mention also the UAE, because a few years ago, when the UAE established the Ministry of AI, this was the first to hear of, because when I was talking to my colleagues around the world and I was telling them we actually do have a minister of artificial intelligence in the country, they were all very much intrigued, and this tells you about the intentionality that we've seen in the country here of embracing AI and driving and making sure that they're getting their fair share of this new technology and its benefits that can be across multiple industries. For countries, I think, to continue to reap the benefits of AI and to leapfrog in this industry, I think there are a few areas that needs to be addressed. One is, how do you move from a siloed work to interdisciplinary collaboration? AI has the biggest impact when it's developed by cross-functional teams with a mix of skills and perspective. The other one is how do you move from experience-based, leader-driven decision-making to data-driven decision-making at the front line? When AI is adopted broadly, employees up and down the hierarchy will augment their own judgment and intuition with algorithms recommendation to arrive to better answers than either humans or machines could reach on their own. And finally, how do you move from rigid and risk-averse to agile, experimental, and adaptable organizations? So in a way, the mindset has to change, so that an idea needs to be fully baked, or a business tool must have every bell and whistle before it's deployed, to really a growth mindset where you're embracing failing fast and experimenting that will yield better and smarter results in the long term. So that is a culture shift that I believe is imperative to embrace, for countries to be able to embrace and benefit out of AI, and really take more of a leadership role, an innovative role, more than just an adopting role in the Middle East.
I think that's a very good point, and I like what you said about the real shift that we're seeing, but of course it's not one that is always easy to make. I think Professor Lee, you have been researching AI and machine learning for more than a decade, so really at the forefront of these. I call it a technology, really it's a group of technologies. But tell me, Professor Lee, what are the main milestones you've seen over this time? And in the corporate world, are companies adopting these new technologies quickly enough or in the right way?
Yeah, thank you. So definitely there are quite several breakthroughs over the years. I've seen, for instance, during actually 2000 to 2010. So you will see lots of research actually around recommendation system ranking. So this kind of technology has been adopted widely in companies such as Amazon, Google, to improve their ranking of the web pages, to improve the accuracy of the recommendation. So this technology has been widely adopted in all these internet companies, and actually make these recommendations very accurate, and and the ranking of the web page is more accurate. So in some sense, this type of technology has been widely adapted in the company, but it also creates some problems, such as these contents or products. We will have the phenomenon of richer get richer. Okay, some of the popular content gets recommended every time, and some of the popular web pages is being appearing on the top of the search engine. So people are now thinking about how to make the recommendation more diverse, and then the search result more fair in some sense, right? So these are the research nowadays, and people are trying to correct this potential error made by this recommendation engine or ranking system. So another actually batch of breakthrough I've seen is from 2010 up to now is something called deep learning, right? So starting from 2011 to 2012, we see that this deep learning model for images is able to recognize the object in the image in gradually reaching a human level kind of accuracy. So a company has been using these kind of technologies for searching images, recognizing products, things like this. Later on, deep learning has also built some models which is able to play Go, some of the games, which is reaching human level performance as well. And but this type of technology has been less adopted in the industry, because this type of breakthrough in AI, which is related to game playing, is very different from real world scenario. It's very hard to apply those technology directly in, for instance, recommendation system or other places, right? So
there's a big potential there, is what you're saying. It's a matter of figuring out the opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then some of the breakthroughs are there, but we don't know how to apply them yet. It's different from real world scenario. And especially some of the recent kind of breakthrough that are more focused on games, and we're still looking at how do we actually apply those to things beyond games, right? For instance, whether it can be applied to real world scenario where you have, for instance, data center. how do you use these technology to actually make data center more efficient, energy efficient, things like this, right? So all these are, interesting breakthroughs. Some are adopted, some are more difficult to adopt, and we are still in the process of gradually looking into, the adaptation of these technology into industry.
Well, I'm sure it will come, but of course, this technology is being used in the real world. I know, Khaled, at BIA, there's a raft of different applications that your company has used, from smart transport fleet management to surveillance cameras that are powered by AI, and also your new HQ building in Sharjah, which is super smart. You can talk to the room and book holidays and appointments and things just by speaking out loud. Tell us, Khaled, what can businesses learn from some of these applications that you've implemented at BIA?
Well, as I mentioned, earlier, BIA is a group of diversified companies and ventures, and we have carefully addressed how to integrate digitalization in our operations, and businesses can learn from us on how AI already has the potential and ability to completely reimagine our business, our environment, and even the way we interact with people. The three biggest examples I can give and share is the launch of our new headquarters that you mentioned, also our Waste Pro Plus solution, and our recent digital ventures. As for our new headquarters, it will be the first fully AI integrated building in the region, as well as one of the smartest buildings in the world. It demonstrates how an AI-powered environment is part of a more sustainable future. With the technologies that have been developed by Microsoft and Johnson Control, there are hundreds of AI use cases in the building. You mentioned a couple of them, where you can actually talk to the building. The building will be able to also minutes of the meetings when you're in a meeting. So the hundreds of AI use cases in the building will realize efficiencies and help reduce operating expenditures across construction, energy management, predictive maintenance, and to ensure employee performance and smart security. Also, our HQ will transform both employee and visitor experiences. Each employee will have their own personal virtual digital assistant and a single point of access on all building-related and self-service options. Leveraging state-of-the-art technologies like facial recognition, machine learning, and robotics to drive higher productivity. The AI layer when it comes to facility management also takes autonomous decisions to remedy faults through predictive maintenance. The system can also detect the number of people in a room, adjust the fresh air supply, as well as optimize temperatures and carbon dioxide levels to provide the best workplace environment for occupants. In time, after enough data has been collected, the AI-powered system will be able to predict occupants' preferences, prepare or modulate future choices for the internal environment. Another example at BIA is our Waste Pro Plus solution, which we developed, which streamlines our waste collection operations from end to end, allowing waste to be tracked from disposal all the way through to BIA's waste treatment and sorting facilities. The resulting data will optimize collection times, removing vehicles from the road that can basically then will reduce the fuel consumption, will reduce the number of manpower, allow BIA to fully monitor logistics and control assets across all stages of the waste management cycle. This is a prime example for business on how AI can impact our day-to-day businesses and enhance them by creating monetary and sustainable value. We also have our digitalization venture, Evotech, which champions digital transformation for other companies and guides them on their AI implementation journey and supports deployment of new technologies. We also recently launched Relive, a digital ecosystem that will help transform everyday decision-making through a set of platforms that offers digital solutions. Relive officially will be launched very soon, but you can already download the Relive app and try out the solution.
Khaled, I really like what you said about the AI taking proactive decisions in your business. I suppose for some CEOs, that might be a little bit scary. They don't fully trust or not fully comfortable in that happening. What is that a struggle you faced, or do you have enough confidence in the systems you've implemented to relax?
Well, I think, innovation is a continuous journey, and with AI, we have been looking at, applying various digital solutions across the group at BIA for at least the last 5 years. And we're looking at it as a holistic solution. It's just not one technology enabler. So I believe today you have to be proactive to be in today's environment to compete. This is one of the areas that we have invested in and continue to invest in a very proactive approach. Again, today, to survive in business and to lead, you have to be proactive and move very quickly. The world is moving at such a rapid pace. So utilizing AI is one way to help us be competitive.
I see. So seize the moment. That's, it's a good message, but not everyone, I think, feels like that. I suppose, Syed, at Microsoft, you work with businesses to drive digitalization. But like Khaled said, this is moving so quickly. Do you think that some organizations, given the rapid pace of change, are taking a step back, a wait and see approach to see how the technology pans out? Is that something you've come across?
Thank you, Ben. Look, yeah, I think for sure that you see examples of both organizations that are pro the technology and taking a kind of a first mover advantage, and others that are really more risk averse. But we believe that especially in new technologies like artificial intelligence, those that embrace it earlier will stand to reap the benefits. And even during the pandemic times, that the COVID crisis, which was the first time that the world has faced both a global health crisis combined with a global economic crisis. But we could see that organizations and even countries that embraced the technology early on were able to weather the storm much better than those that were laggards, both from healthcare providers to education to supply chains to other areas. So we do believe that fundamentally there is great benefits for those that will take the risk and will move earlier. And listening to Khaled's speech as well, it's quite inspiring, because back to your earlier questions, when you're thinking about how countries, or how if we can leapfrog in the use of technologies, the work that they're doing on sustainability, it is one of the areas that we believe as well AI can be a great enabler for it. And it's truly inspiring to hear the work that BIA is doing there and to be partnering with them there. So anyway, so back to your question, yeah, I do believe we do see both examples of organizations that want to move forward and take fast advantage, and those that are more risk averse. We believe that the ones that want to move forward and take advantage earlier will stand to reap greater benefits on the longer term. And like any promising new technology, early adopters and those who make the right investments in their infrastructure and ecosystem early on will win on the long term. We've seen that also on AI. Most of the AI use cases that are causing excitements in the region are the ones that have already had success in the field. And so the wait and see can put hesitant stakeholders at a disadvantage if competitors leap first. I personally think that the UAE businesses and governments have recognized the advantages that will come with early adoption, and they are hungry to do so. According to a recent research that we commissioned, it showed that 93% of senior leaders say that they are actively building skills for AI or have plans to do so. And it showed that 97% of employees are keen to take part of AI reskilling initiatives. So this is just to give you an idea of how much we believe that there is great reception to the technology in our part of the world.
Okay, thank you so much, Syed. some great examples there, I think, of the benefits, but let's make it, make it real. I think, Professor Lee, like we said, you've been researching this for more than a decade. Give us some concrete examples of how you've seen AI, kind of thing you've been researching, make it into the real world and lead to solid business growth. Have you got any examples of that for us?
Right, thank you. I've been actually working with this Chinese company, Alibaba, during my academic leave for 3 years. And they are actually building something called Alipay, it's a mobile payment kind of platform. And essentially in China, you just use your mobile phone, you can go everywhere, pay online, offline. Actually, to make this kind of technology possible, you have to use some AI algorithm behind it to do fraud detection, for instance. Some of the transaction may be fraudulent, and some of the account being created may be fraudulent. You have to build some AI algorithm to detect this fraud, to make this kind of online payment possible, everywhere. And actually, another thing that you can think about using AI for this type of technology is actually for recommending some of the financial products, right? For instance, if you have, these type of online payment kind of information, you could understand a little bit the financial need of a particular person, and you can recommend the right type of financial product, either be loan or some of the, stock kind of product to this user. And that creates actually additional businesses in some sense. And also this type of financial product is able to reach a set of people, which is not possible traditionally in the bank, right? Because bank is typically serving, bigger customers, right? People with enough kind of deposit in the bank. But in this mobile payment case, you can actually reach out very normal people, and then people with low incomes, they might have some financial needs. And that actually creates a lot of business as well. This is just one concrete example I encountered in the past for the AI to change the business, right?
Yeah, but sort of, I think in the banking world, that's often cited as one of the potential problem areas of AI in terms of ethics, built-in bias in, say, if you're applying for a loan, for instance, from a bank. Humans don't make those decisions anymore, but how do you make sure that it's fair? Is that something that you've researched in great depth at the AI University, Professor Lee?
Yeah, definitely. Nowadays, how do you make these AI algorithms more fair? And the bias in the AI algorithm is a very important topic in machine learning and AI. And, this topic actually, when it comes down to, technology or the algorithm development, it becomes very technical, right? But on the high level, it might be related to things such as how do you prepare and collect your data? When you are preparing and collecting the data, you have to make sure somehow, the data has to be diverse enough to cover the entire population. And in the second case will be when you are trying to develop or we call train these AI models, you have to make sure somehow the model is not just capturing some bias in your data, but somehow is able to capture some really useful signals for determining whether you should give this person loan or not. So you have to remove those potential factors, which is creating the bias in your model. So it's actually nowadays been a very important topic in AI, and people trying to de-bias in this machine learning model everywhere. Yeah, including actually image recognition kind of model as well. If you are not creating your data set correctly, you might be mistaken and a person from African America with something else. For instance, it's simply because that in your data set you have fewer of that kind of image in the data set.
Yeah, I think this is an issue that isn't going to go away anytime soon. I've even read about how, we might be able to train AI to eliminate biases in other AI algorithms, which is super interesting. It's talked about a lot, but what I'd like to ask you, Khaled, your book your recent book, Reimagining Businesses with AI, delved into some of the both opportunities and myriad challenges that businesses face when implementing such artificial intelligence systems. Building on what Professor Lee was saying, is the ethical sort of debate around this, is that being considered by businesses, or even maybe putting them off from taking the leap here?
Reimagining Business with AI is a book I co-authored with my friend Sudhi Sinha. We outlined how businesses can apply AI in their respective industries and also the barriers to AI adaptation faced by businesses. So one such challenge is managing organizational change along with AI deployment. With the AI-led transformations, it is critical for organizations to communicate clearly to their employees and other stakeholders about the benefits of adopting AI. This will help to resolve the misconceptions about AI and make the changes seem less intimidating to those who are not familiar with it. There will also be resistance to adopting AI due to concerns that technology could replace human jobs. Again, it goes back to communication. Maximizing the value of AI means using the technology to complement what the human workforce does. Through training and development programs, companies can also take steps to upskill their employees and prepare them for future-proof roles. Another barrier to AI adaptation is a misconception that building new AI system is an expensive investment. This does not have to be so. There are a number of enterprise software vendors who have built in AI tools that companies can leverage to their advantage without having to build their own infrastructure and internal support. Overall, there are certainly challenges we all face. However, as we accelerate the adoption of AI, we will learn more and more to overcome these issues.
Okay, thank you very much. And I like what you said about how this need not be a super expensive exercise. I'm sure, Syed, from your point of view at Microsoft, that is something you find yourself saying to potential clients quite a lot, which is fair enough. But I mean, I wonder, do you have any concrete examples about the real savings and efficiencies that have been made possible through AI?
Thanks, Ben. Look, that's a very good question, but it's a very hard question to answer because of the broad nature of the AI scenarios that we deal with. It's very hard to come up with a general, saving percentage. But I can tell you that depending on the scenario, depending on each industry, there's great savings. So, for example, we were presenting recently AI for agriculture. Okay, and we're showing how today the AI advancements in agriculture combined with IoT technologies are helping in the area of food security for countries, and how today it's also helping to save water, it's a great aspiration for everyone now to save water up to 40%. And it's how it's increasing the yield of crops from the same land by up to also around 35%. So all this is very tangible gains that we're seeing in just one scenario when it comes to agriculture, but it's the same in every other industry. What we believe, again, is that our approach is democratizing AI. So back to what Khaled was saying, it's not really that it has to be a very large solution, a very expensive solution. AI can be infused in every product that we have, and it really complements the human ingenuity in this case. So from simple things like speech recognition and bots and stuff like that helps you, or to Cortana that sends me a mail in the morning with my tasks and stuff that I committed on in emails that I've written or emails that I've received in the previous days, to autonomous vehicles and stuff that's quite complex. So AI is really spans very different and scenarios from scale and from impact. But the thing that's for sure across all of them, it's increasing the productivity and it's saving the cost.
Okay, that's a great example. And obviously you mentioned agriculture there, which is a huge issue in the region where we live, where I think 85% of all the food we eat is imported. That's a tangible, you get a bigger, more real example than that, do you?
Yeah, and during the pandemic, it was more evident because it became not just an issue of affordability, whether you could afford, importing food or not. It just became an issue of practicality during this time, and how the supply chains are working, how logistics are working, and stuff like that. And the need for food security priority became, I would argue, one of the top 3 needs for any country that we have in the region right now.
Okay, that's a great example, and maybe with that in mind, turn to Professor Lee. Professor, I'd be super interested to hear about what you're working on at the moment and how we may be seeing this in the real world in a couple of years' time. Is there anything? Tell me what excites you the most about the future of AI and how it's going to be applied in reality.
Thank you. So there are many actually things going on in the university. University has the luxury to explore many things. But one thing that I've been working on now is to look at the data which can be represented as a graph structure. So what is graph structure? For instance, if you have a lot of mobile payment accounts, they have financial transactions. Every time you have a transaction, it forms an edge in the network or the graph. And if you have a lot of financial transactions, it's a very complex kind of spatial, temporal, evolving graph. You want to do, fraud detection, do recommendation on this, then you have to be able to analyze these type of graph data. So this is like a big graph in the social level, but there are also small graphs. Even you think about molecules, chemical molecules, drug molecules. They are graphs, and it's like each node is going to be actin. They are connected with the chemical bonds. So you want to actually use the AI algorithm to analyze these molecular graphs to predict its property, whether it's a good drug or not, right? Whether this is a very good, maybe solar panel material or not. So these type of data, which can be represented as graph, excites me a lot nowadays because it has the potential to, help us to discover new drugs. And on the other side, it has the potential to help us, build better fraud detection recommendation systems. This is something I'm working on at the moment. But
that has amazingly broad applications. I mean, that might be surprising for some people who are listening in now. I mean, how broad it really is in terms of how it can be used. Is that common, do you think, for the kind of things you're developing at the university?
Yeah, typically when we are working on university projects, it's some methodology and, working on some abstract data type. For instance, I mentioned the data which can be represented as a graph. Once you have such an AI model developed for this type of abstract data, then you can actually adapt this to work with the specific type of data, for instance, molecular graph and financial transaction network, social network, maybe even logistic network as well. So that's how, in some sense, university research can complement industry research or industry applications. So, and we also, educate people with these type of skills such that they can go back to the, industry and change the economy as well.
Wow, that's certainly a lot of potential there. I think maybe Khaled, you could paint a picture for us. Same question for you, really, about how BIA plans to roll out future AI applications. We've heard about the Office of the Future and some of your smart GPS technology that your fleet use. What's next?
Well, overall, our ambition is to become a smarter organization. So beyond our current use of AI for waste collection and route optimization, we also want to explore demand planning to predict capacities and use of new technologies such as sensors and imaging to improve waste segregation for recycling. Another concept of interest is to have use of AI in gamification to encourage communities and individuals to embrace more responsible waste disposal practices. We have the BIA School of Environment that runs across over 250 schools. So using AI and gamification is something that actually we're working on. Also across the region, we want to build on our established foothold in Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Recently, BIA has expanded internationally, and now we are present in Medina, in Saudi Arabia, and as well as a new administrative capital in Cairo. So looking at how we can also deploy our AI solutions in these markets, as well as scale up our operations. Also, our sustainable transport arm, ION, is also identifying opportunities for AI in future interconnected transport. We're now building a charging infrastructure. We also have our own B2B ride-hailing platform we developed, and we also operate some autonomous pods, which you can also see them in Masdar City. There's a lot that we want to do, and we hope to announce more exciting projects in the near future.
Wow, autonomous vehicles as well. You're looking at. Is that something?
So today, BIA owns a fleet of over 2,000 vehicles, and one of the main contributors for air pollution is transport. So we've been investing more in sustainable transport solutions, and that just doesn't mean investing in electric vehicles and infrastructure. Also in terms of investing in technologies. So the cars that we have in the vehicles spend less time on the road and spend less fuel, less manpower. So we're investing more in that to ensure that our operations has less impact on the environment.
Wow, and I suppose autonomous vehicles, I know they're coming to Abu Dhabi as well, is doing a trial with G42 as well, the AI company based in Abu Dhabi. Do you think, Khaled, we'll see fleets of BIA vehicles driving themselves across the Emirates anytime soon?
Well, I think it's going to happen sooner or later, and this is where just like we're adopting AI, we're also looking at smart transport solutions from now. We already have some autonomous sweepers actually that we have within our fleet. So this is an area we are looking at investing more in and looking for more autonomous solutions.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. Syed, we're nearly out of time, but I would like to ask you, if that's okay, for your kind of final word really on what excites you about the future potential, and whether, going back to our original question, whether Middle East companies can grab an outsized proportion of this $15.7 trillion opportunity.
Thanks, Ben. Look, I'm very optimistic about the future and the future of our part of the world. I think we're very quickly embracing new technologies and taking a leadership role in it, that in innovation, which is why it's quite exciting. You've seen across, at least in the UAE here, I can give some examples how Abu Dhabi is building really a strong startup ecosystem, attracting new minds and talents into the Emirates. Similarly in Dubai, you're seeing same thing. Similarly in Sharjah, you're seeing same thing. So it's exciting me about the potential of the UAE, and it's not just the UAE. I think also the neighboring countries are doing the same. I think the focus on skills is the most important focus that any country should have at this time. And I'm glad we're joined with Professor Lee Song here with the work that the university is doing. Is really cutting edge stuff. So this is filling me with great level of optimism. Of course, on the other hand, I think with any great technology, I mean, the more powerful the tool is, the greater the benefit or damage it can cause. So back to your earlier point, I think on ethics, I think this is a very important point to be instilled from early on. Concepts around fairness, around equitable, use of the technology, around transparency and accountability. Those are concepts that has to be instilled from day one. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to do it at a later stage. But I'm quite confident with the intentionality we're seeing from both the public sector leaders as well as the commercial business leaders in the Middle East to take full advantage of those new technologies that we will be heading, and will be net exporter of those talents and technologies in the very soon future.
Okay, well, certainly an optimistic view there, Saad, which is good. Not everyone shares it, as we said at the beginning, and I know I promised that this would not be a dystopian conversation, but we have to touch on it. I mean, moving to you, Professor Lee. I mean, what's your view on the kind of end game of AI development? I mean, are you optimistic about the long-term view, because some of it's a bit scary, or are you do you think, how do you think it's going to pan out?
Thank you, Ben. It's a challenging question, yeah, but I'm optimistic about the development of AI. As Saeed just mentioned, the greater the technology, it's associated with the greater benefit and also potential damage, right? But we are still in the very early stage. And although we are seeing some breakthrough of AI, but it's only AI which is targeted at a very specific task, very small task. So now we are looking into, how do we monitor AI, make AI fair, and then trying to explain the decision of AI. So I think if we can sort of couple the development of AI with this, close monitoring and understanding of AI, we can make sure the AI is moving towards, beneficial direction. For instance, we can encourage more research on AI for healthcare related projects, for instance, right? And then trying to find the disease targets and cure human diseases, and then trying to understand the decision AI made in the middle, trying to make this AI model fair. And I think we can altogether steer AI towards a beneficial direction. So I'm very optimistic. In future, we as a human will work together with AI to make a better society. That's my vision of the end game of AI.
Humans and machines working together. That's an optimistic view. Khaled, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I'm also very optimistic, and looking at, what we've been doing at BIA, we embrace, innovation and digitalization to achieve our end goals and our vision. So I truly believe with the scope and potential and scale of AI has only just begun to be tapped into, and it has the possibility to intertwine with everything that we do and need, from healthcare, construction, waste management, and this is just today and now. So we can only imagine where it will go from here. I also truly believe AI will not and cannot fully replace the work of humans, but is complementary. So businesses will still depend on human skills and capabilities, such as problem solving, creativity, intuition, empathy. So while certain tasks and job and roles might become obsolete, companies and employees can and should work together to find new opportunities where they can add value. Through the right training and development, employees can be upskilled to support AI deployment and growth.
Okay, that's great. And Khaled, that's an optimistic view as well. In terms of BIA, I guess, is that something that you've experienced? I mean, in terms of your workforce, has it, shrunk or grown with the introduction of these technologies, or what are you seeing on the ground?
Well, actually, our workforce has grown. Our workforce, we're now about 10,000 people across 3 countries. And I think with the company's growth, we're again looking at how to optimize certain roles. We have reduced certain roles and looked at how to use technology. The examples I gave, route optimization, so less number of vehicles on the road, and to do the same job that we used to do, less number of people. But I have now more people who are working on when I look at the control room and data scientists, and so we have certain jobs that are being replaced, but as a group we've actually been growing and employing more people.
Okay, that's great. I think later this afternoon we are going to be hearing international view on AI and how it's being used in business. But for now, gentlemen, thank you so much. Khaled, I'd like to give the last word to you, if that's okay. I mean, in terms of, if you had one piece of advice to companies here in the Middle East looking to transform their businesses, what would it be?
Well, I think, people need to embrace technology and take a holistic approach, and AI, not to look at AI as a singular objective, but looking at a more holistic approach. And I think, our region is here, especially here in the UAE, we've taken a very proactive approach, and it's led to a lot of success in the UAE, and I think we will see more of that in the region.
Okay, I think that's a very positive note to end on. We're going to be talking about this more later, but gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you all. As Khalid mentioned, BIA's new headquarter building, which was designed by Zaha Hadid Architects and will open later this year, is a showcase for how AI can be used in the workplace and beyond. This video shows just what it will allow you to do.
At BIA's new headquarters, a new era of smart workspaces begins. Designed by Zaha Hadid Architects, the headquarters symbolizes BIA's twin-pillared strategy of sustainability and digitalization. This smart AI-powered office of the future will not only achieve LEED Platinum certification and be a net zero energy building, but will also be filled with advanced technologies integrated with artificial intelligence, such as predictive facilities maintenance, smart security, and innovative digital twin technology, enabling seamless movement and efficiencies.
Good morning, Mariam. If you leave in the next 10 minutes, you should reach the office at the usual time.
Before you step foot into this office of the future, our BIA Companion app is delivering smart features like navigation tools, traffic updates.
Your vehicle is fully charged. Traffic is light today.
And even smart pre-allocated parking spaces, creating an unparalleled experience for employees and visitors.
Parking space number 86 is now available.
Once at the HQ, hundreds of AI use cases converge. Office access and building navigation are linked by facial recognition security systems and a smart concierge, creating contactless pathways that are ideal for a post-COVID new normal environment.
Good morning, Mariam. Welcome to BIA Office. Please choose your beverage.
AI-integrated ERP systems streamline all business functions.
Your coffee has been delivered. You have a meeting scheduled with Mohammed from Evotech at 11 a.m.
The Employee's Companion platform provides intuitive HR self-service functions.
Hello, please place an annual leave request for next Monday.
Hello, Mariam. Let me help you with your request. You would like to book your annual leave for Monday, October 16th. Please confirm.
Yes, please.
Your annual leave has been sent for approval.
Within our smart spaces, ambient settings like temperature and lighting are optimized for the comfort of everyone.
Hello, Mohammed. Your meeting at 11 a.m. requires registration. Would you like to be registered?
Yes, please.
Please verify the information on screen and confirm with a yes.
Yes, confirm.
Thank you for completing the pre-registration. Look forward to meeting at our offices.
On arrival, BIA's concierge welcomes visitors and guides them through the building.
Hello, Mohammed. Welcome back to BIA head office. Please make your way to room number 8 on the second floor for your meeting with Mariam. Hello, Mariam. Your visitor, Mohammed from Evotech, has arrived for the 11 a.m. meeting.
Smart meeting rooms transcribe, record, and send meeting minutes.
Good morning, Mariam and Mohammed. Please log into your workspace. Shall I record the meeting?
Yes, please.
Meeting has been recorded and minutes of meeting have been sent to all attendees.
For BIA's leadership, our AI-integrated Office of the Future provides real-time overviews of all operations and performance, access to figures and forecasts, inform critical decision-making for a data-driven organization.
The visitors for your 12 o'clock meeting has arrived and the boardroom is ready. Hello, Mariam. Your annual leave request for Monday, October 16th has been approved. Hope you had a great day at work. See you tomorrow.
All our building technologies and systems were developed in partnership with Johnson Controls, Microsoft, and our digital venture, Evotech. As a singular, inspiring example of co-creation and innovation. At BIA's new headquarters, expect the unexpected. Expect the Office of the Future.
Our second panel discussion today has a more international flavor. It looks at how, as AI rapidly proliferates in our everyday lives, it brings with it a host of risks, some operational, some ethical, and some of which we are not even close to answering. We're joined by representatives from IBM, Microsoft, and the Dubai Future Foundation to talk through how companies can mitigate those risks.
Welcome to this discussion on managing change in the AI age. We heard earlier how artificial intelligence will be the engine driving the most successful businesses of the 21st century. It will increasingly automate what corporations and governments do. That means vast numbers of decisions being made without us humans ever even getting involved. That's more efficient. And greater efficiency means greater profits. But aside from greater automation being rather unsettling to the more control freak kind of CEOs out there, all this comes with risks, operational risks, ethical risks, and the risks of doing real harm to humans. Well, our wonderful panelists this afternoon will tell us how embracing AI responsibly and ethically can mitigate some of those dangers and help businesses flourish, which at the end of the day is why businesses are investing in this technology. We have with us this afternoon Francesca Rossi, who is the AI Ethics Global Leader at IBM. Hi, Francesca.
Hi.
Also with us today is Dr. Noah Rafford, who is the futurist in chief. I messed up my favorite job title in the world there, Noah. Hello, Noah. Futurist in chief at the Dubai Future Foundation, where he's also chief of global affairs. Hello, Noah. And last but not least, Ulrich Hohmann, who is corporate vice president in the cloud and AI business at Microsoft. Welcome all.
Thank you.
Hi, Ben. Thank you. So look, I'm going to get straight into this with Francesca, if that is okay. Francesca, I know this is your bread and butter, but I don't have to tell you this, but the ethical dilemmas around AI are extremely broad, ranging from bias in how the recruitment process works, machines deciding whether people should be shortlisted for jobs, to at the other end of the extreme, arguably, whether robots should kill, which I guess not. But we're not going to get quite into that side of things. But tell me, Francesca, from your point of view, how far into the journey are we in creating the right ethical frameworks around AI adoption?
Thank you. So yeah, so I think that we as I think the whole ecosystem around AI, those that produce AI, those that use AI, and the population, the policymakers, and so on, we went a long way since in the last, let's say, 5 years, because really 5 years ago, there was no awareness of AI bias, of other ethical issues, explainability, transparency, robustness. So the technology was different than what it is now, but also there were already these things. And 5 years ago, most of the people in AI were thinking that the more data, the better, period. So we, in 5 years, really, we went a very long way in putting together technological tools to address these issues, but also, and more importantly, understanding that the technological tools are just the first step and not even the most important one, because it's important to train, to educate, to make people more aware, and not just the developers that are building, of course, these AI systems, but also those that are going to use the AI system, those that are going to regulate AI technology, and so on. So really, it's a very, complex, multidimensional space where you have to act from, tools, governance, methodologies, adoption mechanisms, awareness, education, training, and so on. And then there is also a lot of work done from third parties and collaborative initiative around standards, around certifications, around this, and as well as regulation. You may know that, for example, we are in Europe. They're waiting for a new regulation around AI applications by I think April 21st. So people know more or less what the European Commission has in mind, but we will see what is being put in place. So you see that there are a lot of actors acting. Now almost every country has an AI strategy that includes AI ethics considerations and guidelines. Companies are really, especially big ones like Microsoft, IBM, and others, are doing a lot of work internally to build the correct AI ethics governance framework. Like we have our own ethics board, Microsoft has a similar one, and so on. And also they're doing things not just in isolation. We understand that not a single company can solve and address these issues. So for example, with Microsoft and other companies, we built the partnership on AI. We work together and with all the other stakeholders to understand these issues, define the best practices, and so on. So I see really a lot of work that has been done, not just at the technology and the science level, which is very important, but also in these other dimensions that are fundamental.
Okay, that's very interesting. You mentioned, different countries working on different strategies there and frameworks. I know, moving to you, Noah, if that's okay. Dubai has its own framework in this way that it developed a couple of years ago now, which is commendable. But also, and it's also being done by good organizations like IBM and Microsoft. But from your point of view, Noah, I mean, these are arguably the kind of government and organizations that you'd expect to be doing this. Do you think that the business world is being as proactive as a whole? The smaller companies, they're not, not straight tech companies. Are the rest following?
It's an excellent question, and thank you so much for having us. I think that Francesca's spot on in the sense that whilst there are some giants in the space, there are even larger consortiums in the space. And when it comes to how those small, medium, and large players intersect and interact, that's really ultimately where the state comes in, facilitating things around protocols for data sharing, for we do a lot of work, for example, with many of our partners through our Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution with the World Economic Forum on looking at AI in the procurement process. So educating our colleagues within the different Dubai government departments around when you are purchasing quote unquote smart solutions or automated solutions, what are the things that you should be looking for? What's the basic level of understanding that you have to have? So it's these sorts of things where the state starts to knit those together. But and I think that Francesca is also, in our experience, spot on, given the exponential growth and progress over the last 5 years of the level of sophistication of the tools available on the market, the amount of data out there, the amount of, the sophistication of the conversations going on around this. So, which has been historically led by the very, very advanced research and innovation companies, the large multinationals like IBM, Microsoft, and many others, and then the consortiums around them that build on leading academic research centers. So your question was about small or medium-sized enterprises who historically are technology consumers. At the end of the day, they generally tend not to be, at least in a generic sense, technology creators, unless their job is in their sector creating a product or a service or something of that nature. And in that sense, these will ultimately be the winners of this AI revolution in the long run. So, there was a certain, perhaps I misread the tone of the question, but like, are they running behind? And I would argue that no, not everyone needs to be generating this technology. Not even everyone can ultimately, but as the market becomes more mature and as the capabilities of automated solutions start to permeate across every sector, from virtual private assistants to all sorts of optimization tools and techniques, replacing paralegals for law firms, or qualifying people for credit like Ant Financial does, or insurance premiums, all these sorts of things. That is where actually the real benefit will be felt. So really, in some respects, it's great that the big players are doing all the hard work up front, the big players being the state, being IBM, being Microsoft, being the consortiums there, because it would be unrealistic to ask the small and medium players to be able to sort of really work that through, because we're all trying to do our jobs. But ultimately, in the long run, it is the small and medium-sized enterprises who will reap the biggest rewards from this, as, for example, they maybe can spend 30, 40% less on their operations, or they're able to reach new markets in a more easy way, right? We're still a little bit ahead of the curve from that, but ultimately it's going to be the consumer adoption, and I mean consumer not necessarily in a retail perspective, but small and medium-sized enterprises who will be adopting this, and that's where the growth markets are going to be, and when we start to feel the real society-wide impact of AI, both for better and potentially for worse. Okay,
so you see these. I mean, we're talking about ethics originally, but also more broadly now. I mean, you see some of these, best practice frameworks being sort of introduced by the the larger organizations and governments, and then kind of passed down as best practices, I guess.
Exactly. And GDPR is an interesting example in terms of the data space. Like that's a very large scale regulation that then everyone who's active in the web and active in the data space has to then accommodate and deal with, which is actually quite beneficial for small and medium sized enterprises to have very clear guidelines, right? Whatever your feelings on GDPR or GDPR-like policies are, at the end of the day, it would be unrealistic to expect, if I'm manufacturing refrigerators or something of that nature, I don't have AI ethics experts on my staff. It would be unrealistic of me to expect to be involved in that conversation. I just want to make sure that the people who do, such as ourselves on this panel, whose job it is to start to explore that, they've done their work, it's approved, it's authorized, it makes sense, and I can buy the product which is going to help me get my business done better, faster, cheaper, and within the constraints of ethics and social norms. So it's coming.
Okay, it's coming. That's good. I mean, Uli, I suppose with what Microsoft does, you're dealing with different customer clients on a day-to-day basis, Uli. Tell us, I mean, how central do you see AI being to the day-to-day running of companies as a whole over the next 10 years? How big a driver of businesses will it be?
Well, so most of us don't realize how much AI you already use. I don't know if you're an Alexa or Siri or Google Now user or using Cortana. If you do, you're using AI. And you're already using Netflix, for example, and you're using AI because there's a very intelligent recommendation engine. If you're going online shopping, there's recommendation engines that's powered by AI. So to a degree, you can argue that AI is already mainstream and is already part of our every life, but obviously it's becoming the new normal. It is part of our lives today, and it will become even more important from our perspective. So that we have a Zoom meeting here, and I assume that Zoom has also transcription and translation capabilities. I'm not that familiar with Zoom. I'm using Microsoft Teams, where we do have those capabilities, and that's transcription in multiple languages, translation in real time in multiple languages. That's all driven by AI. So from my perspective, it's already here. The big question is, what is it going to look like in 2030? What are our roles going to be? Noah mentioned paralegals and so forth. So how do we effectively augment human capability with the AI capabilities and make it so that humans do what humans do best, which is creativity, thinking about complex problem, asking great questions, and then partner with AI. Sounds really funny, but it is really the way I think about this, or we think about this, to bring together what AI does best, which is sorting through a lot of data, recognizing patterns, and then helping putting it all together. From our perspective, AI plus human ingenuity has the potential to really tackle the world's tough problems like climate change, clean food and water, living and traveling, and so forth. And again, the foundation has to be responsible AI. All the topics that Francesca and Noah, to a degree, mentioned are really important to build into the fabric of how we think about AI, how we use it, and then compose humans and AI capabilities together for the best outcome that we can think about.
Yeah, I mean, that's super interesting, Uli. I think, I've asked this question of today and also previously of experts a lot in terms of, it's a pretty old debate, whether AI will take human jobs. And a lot of people say, no, it'll free up time for humans to do more worthwhile tasks. I mean, you could argue that's a bit optimistic, and when this rolls out, maybe that won't happen. Maybe it will just put people out of the job. Francesca, do you have a view on that?
Before you go there, so one of the things that was interesting is, I read it somewhere, that 63% of the jobs that were advertised in 2018 didn't exist in 1940. So we have always seen jobs shifting from one dimension to the other, and technology has been a major driver in creating these new jobs. And I personally think AI will be very similar to this point, where effectively you will see new jobs emerging and other jobs will become less important over time.
Yeah, that's a very good point, I think. Francesca, do you have a view on that? Is that something you look at from an ethical standpoint?
Yeah, it's also related, to what Uli said about this human-machine cooperation. Also at IBM, we think that AI should augment human intelligence. So, in fact, for a while, we called it augmented intelligence, also because it was the same acronym, AI, but then it didn't work well because it's very confusing. But anyway, we think that it should augment human intelligence, not create another form of intelligence, because AI has a lot of capabilities that humans do not have. So that will be, and that's the combination of the two is where you see the best results. So that's where, the impact on jobs will be, because yes, many jobs, probably not jobs, tasks within jobs will probably be done by machines. Many tasks will remain to human beings. Many jobs will be created, but of course, it's more difficult to imagine the jobs that will be created compared to the jobs that we think are going to be disappearing, done by humans. So that's why the people are afraid, because they cannot imagine. It's difficult to imagine which new jobs will be created. But as Uli said, just by looking a little bit backward, you can see a lot of jobs are being created. But even if you go a little bit more backward, like beginning of the previous century, more than 90% of the people were working on agriculture. Now it's about 2%. So of course, many jobs were created, but we couldn't imagine them when everybody was working in agriculture. So jobs will be created, some tasks will disappear, but all the current jobs will certainly change. And that is a fact. And change in which way? In the way that machines and humans will work together. Humans will be able to make better decisions according to whatever criteria you have for defining this better, with the support of machines. And so I see that more as a transformation than as a job creation or elimination, and what's the biggest number here?
Sure, that's another optimistic view. And, Noah, as Francesca said, jobs that almost we can't imagine today, or maybe. But I'm going to put you on the spot here. You're so we said, a futurist in chief at the Future Foundation in Dubai. Is this something you've looked at? Have you looked ahead to the kind of jobs we might be doing in the next 30 years or so?
Yeah, very, very much so. And I think that the way that we've looked at this might be a slight reframing from the way the conversation is usually explored. I think that, Uli's example of the 63% of jobs that were created is a very interesting one because, if you also look at North America, for example, startling amount, 95% of all jobs that have been created since the year 2000 are temporary jobs, right? They're gig economy jobs. And I think that it's an interesting statistic to contrast that with, because ultimately when we're talking about what does the future of the labor market look like, these are questions primarily of labor economy, of political philosophy, and of leadership decision-making, right? And one of the reasons that one could argue the world is facing many of the challenges that it has faced has been historically there has been an abrogation of the responsibility of leaders to take decisions or engage in those difficult ones, and that those difficult decisions that have been abrogated to technical expertise that is excellent in their field, but may not be as strong, have an overview, say, of the big picture vision where all these things come together. And I think that's often the case when we discuss AI and technological unemployment, is the ultimate, technology doesn't create or destroy jobs. It's how we as society choose to apply that ultimately. And you see how that has had an impact in different markets. Like if you look, there's a great MIT study looking at the American economy, where they found that between 2000 and 2017, the introduction of robotics and automation was responsible for something like 3.5 or 4 times as many job losses as outsourcing and globalization. Okay, that's great. Well, but if you look at that in the context of relatively similar levels of automation in the labor force in many European economies that have a different labor policy, different protections around, the social security net, et cetera, the impact has been far less, right? So same technology, different political economies. Ultimately, when we're talking about a time frame beyond just the 4 to 5 year horizon, it really is our choice to structure the kinds of labor markets and political economies that we want to have, almost irrespective of the technological capabilities of AI and automation. With one big caveat, I think Francesca's example of the agricultural revolution is a good one, because ultimately the degree of disruption and transformation which AI enables or promises, right, is so fundamentally different than anything else that has really been in, let us say, 20th century labor economics up to date, that really it's on the scale of social transformation as the agricultural to industrial revolution was in that sense. So whilst we still think that from a policy perspective, it is ultimately a question of the kind of society, the kind of labor market, the kind of countries or nations that we want to build. And that's a question of leadership, ultimately, of dialogue and leadership, not one of technology. The reality is everything is going to be changing, and not just changing by itself due to the capabilities of AI, but in the context of a collapsing catastrophic climate emergency, dramatic income inequalities at the global scale, shifting geopolitical contexts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So everything is going to change, which I think is the good news, because we have the opportunity to really action some really large scale experiments around the kind of economy we want to build and the kind of society we want to live in. And AI will play a large part in that, but those answers to the question of what does the future of the labor market look like cannot just be technological in nature. They have to be comprehensively understandable, right, of what technology can do and what it offers. But ultimately, it's a question of the kind of society that we all want to build.
Sure, that's a very good answer. It's a very nuanced thing, and depending on geography, of course, each society is different and has its different protections. But of course, this is happening. In Dubai, where we are, Noah, we have robots roaming one of the local supermarkets. Yeah, exactly. We have autonomous delivery vehicles being trialed. So this is already happening. And and in terms of, if you're a CEO, can you imagine people being reluctant to let go of? So I made jokes at the beginning about the control freak CEO, but it's serious. It's a business you've built up, and then turning over a lot of the decision making to machines. That can't be easy for many people to take that leap. Noah or Uli, what do you think of that dilemma?
Maybe, Uli, sorry, could I just reflect very specifically on that for a very brief second in the context of Dubai? I mean, like many economies, about 70% of Dubai's economy is roughly family businesses in one way, shape, or form or another, small, medium, and large. And I've been having conversations with a lot of these family business owners, first, second, third generation, around automation and AI. And one of the concerns that they expressed repeatedly, which it surprised me the first few times I heard about this, was it's not just a question of economic efficiency here. I was in a conversation with a very large steel company, family owned, and they had maybe not very large, but 4,000 or 5,000 employees, and there were technological improvements right now that they could do, which would allow them to cut their labor force in half. But this family had been in steel and employing these other 5,000, 6,000 people also for generations. And there was a sense of mutual responsibility that went beyond the economic or the technical calculus around automating that. So what I was surprised to hear is a lot of people wrestling with the social and the ethical implications of essentially laying off thousands of your of staff, right? Like doing 60%, 80% of your work with machines. And then what would those people do, especially if you've employed their father or their mother or their mother's mother, historically throughout the generations. So I was really surprised to hear that. And I think it speaks to the larger complexity of that. And perhaps the reluctance is not just one of giving up control, but of feeling responsible to the legacy that you've inherited in the families, the thousands of families who are involved in those businesses there. And this is really where the real challenge, I think, will ultimately come, at least perhaps in this part of the world, is around what do you do with all the people that you are actually responsible for as a company owner or as a manager?
Yeah, that's a very, very good human answer there, Noah. I think it's a dilemma many industries will face. Uli, you deal with companies, or Microsoft as a whole deals with companies and clients on a daily basis. I mean, what kind of the opportunities and risks you see behind CEOs increasingly relying on machines to make decisions?
Well, the way we think about this, opportunities are going to be plentiful. I think the key piece is how do you use those responsibly? And I think Noah brought up a really important dimension. What do you do with your employees? What's the contract that you have with them? I think there is a society conversation that needs to happen, because companies in itself are ill-equipped to have this conversation. I really appreciate these steel companies owners' dilemma, but ultimately it's something that goes beyond companies, because companies have to compete in the world. And so they will have to take advantage of technology responsibly, which I think is the key part. But at the end of the day, we're thinking about how do you increase productivity, because productivity is ultimately the currency that everybody is using to pay for advances in society, GDP advances and those kind of things. How do we save time in terms of, Satya, our CEO, said it very well. We are moving to an attention deficit economy. It's effectively attention that's becoming the very scarce commodity for everybody. And certainly AI can help with that one. The other piece that we have seen AI really helping with is bridging domain skills gaps. So we have a great example where workers in a manufacturing factory that come on the job normally would have to be taken aside, be trained, or there would have to be a person assigned to them. In this case, we used a combination of AI and HoloLens as a now AR environment, and we have a capability, what's called guides, that effectively help a worker saying, hey, do this here, do that here. And if the worker is struggling, then they can do remote help. Where an expert
so you see, this is the AR VR headset, and they can see this in real time. Is that right?
Yep. That's the nice thing about the AR system, which effectively allows you to see the digital environment as well as the physical one. And so you can project the digital plan and the digital help over the physical environment that you're working in. So this person, instead of having to spend weeks to learn, they effectively were learning on the job while doing it. And the system was effectively helping them. And so I think this is really what we call bringing the first line workers and the knowledge workers together in a seamless way, supported by technology, supported by communication, because 5G and other capabilities that are coming will effectively bring AI even further into our lives. And then obviously the compute power that everybody is relying on, both in the cloud as well as what we call the edge. So the factory, the car, the X-ray machine in your hospital, those are what we call edge devices. And I think all of that will come together to really build these opportunities for increased productivity at scale, saving time and money ultimately. And the risk, I think we've really come a long way, as Francesca already said. It's really important that at design time, so the people that build the AI get the support they need to understand how to build fair AI, understand bias, understand what the model is really going to do, so explainability, traceability, and those kind of things. But we also think about when the system runs, it needs to continuously being observed. The data needs to continuously being evaluated, because if you feed an AI system wrong data, it will make wrong decisions. And so you have to think about not just building it, but also when you're operating and running it, having safeguards in place. And obviously, companies like Microsoft are building technology to help you with that building as well as that running, and making sure that the AI system continues to do what you designed it to do without bias, with fairness, and so forth.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Uli. And I like what you're saying about, the importance of, checks, human checks, that bias, things like bias isn't built into these systems. I think that's super important. But of course, we're talking about AI here, which, the clue's in the name, should be able to, pick up on this itself. I mean, maybe Francesca, do you see possibly the development of AI systems that check up on other AI systems, a sort of self-checking system whereby they monitor for biases and other problems with these systems automatically? Or is that just too risky?
Well, okay, so let me start from connecting to what Uli just said, that first of all, so these designers and developers need to be trained and need to have the right tools, need to have precise guidelines how to use these tools, need to have awareness of their own biases, to use the tools in the right way, to be embedded in a framework where these tools are used not just at the end when the product is ready almost to be deployed. Let me check if it's biased or not. Let me check if it's trainable or not, whatever. But since the start, so just like now it's it's normal to have security by design embedded into this SI pipeline, or privacy by design embedded, fully integrated into the pipeline. Also, AI ethics with all the various dimensions should be completely integrated. So that's a journey that I think many companies are doing to make that really the standard and the norm. Now, once and I agree with Uli that the thing is not finished when the product is being deployed, but you also need to train the operator and check what happens after it has been deployed. In terms of increase the productivity, also to go back to what Uli said, yes, of course, a company wants to increase the productivity. A client of IBM, usually there are other big companies like an airport or a hospital or a bank or a financial institution. So of course they want to increase productivity, but more and more these clients actually ask us, but what are you doing around bias? Are you taking care of that? Or what are you doing about transparency? So what are you telling me about the pipeline of AI? So more and more the market is such a way that the ecosystem the parts of the ecosystem connect with each other and push the other ones to actually move, I see, in the direction of taking care in some satisfactory way about these issues. So so now the question is, okay, now that you understand, with training people and having the right tools and the right governance in place to make AI as fair as possible, but still we have to agree that I think that we all agree that it's not possible to have zero bias, because bias also is one of the main technique that main capabilities around machine learning algorithms. But so transparency is very important, because you need to be aware of the bias that is still there, if it's important, relevant for your application, or maybe not, so you don't care about it. So transparency and explainability are also two other dimensions that are attached. They always have to be attached to the handling of bias. But these AI systems, then, okay, first of all, before thinking about using them to de-bias or something other AI system, they can be used to actually alert human beings themselves. So, for example, we have a system that helps managers that are in charge of hiring new people, and choosing a short list out of a long list of applicants, and the system helps them making this list as diverse as possible. So there is a way also that these systems, once they are you understand how to embed the bias detection and mitigation into the system, then they can help human beings actually be more aware of their own biases, which is a virtuous cycle, because then these human beings are more aware of their own biases, and in whatever they do, whether they are delivering another AI system or they are doing something else, they will improve the fairness of whatever they are doing. So to me, I mean, again, human-machine cooperation again is the key here. So giving an AI system where you need to think about the whole ecosystem and the whole dimension and building it in the right way, then I'm not sure that the best use of this AI system is to use it in a completely autonomous way to check on another AI system, because the other AI system, still you need people to understand, or multi-stakeholder consultation to understand what's the kind of fairness that you want here. That AI system by itself will not be able to know. So you still need a human AI collaboration, I think.
Okay. Noah is nodding his head a lot here. It sounds like you're in agreement with Francesca there, is that fair to say? And if so, do you have any examples of this, anything that maybe has been done in Dubai where this is happening?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, without getting gendered about it, there are a lot of the human-machine interface, people call these keeping the man in the middle, right? So obviously it's not about a man or a woman in that sense, but including a human being whose job is to actually maintain accountability for the decisions that the system outputs. And we, one of the things that we do in the Dubai Future Foundation is every year historically at a big event we run called the World Government Summit. The foundation doesn't run it, I mean the Prime Minister's office, and it's its own organization, but we participate in it from the foundation's perspective. we would create an interactive exhibition that would explore some particular topic. And a few years ago, we did something on the future of AI in government. I mean, you can see the Museum of the Future, the permanent Museum of the Future being built right behind me, opening soon. But the way we tried to represent this human in the middle conversation was by recreating an actual, the cabinet office of the UA cabinet, cast forward into the future. And it was there's a very iconic shape in the UAE. It has that sort of U-shaped cabinet with the prime minister sitting at the center and then all the other ministers around, and very sort of typical cabinet kind of layout. But we recreated that where instead of the ministers were standing in front of a sort of a screen, they had these big kind of iPads or Microsoft Surfaces already now. But the idea was that they would be supported by an AI shadow minister, right? Like an actual system who was responsible for providing recommendation and advice around key policy questions. So not control. So you as the minister were presented with a series of policy choices, and then it would provide, in the same way that I as a policy analyst or any strategy consultant will advise a corporate, here's a couple of options. Here's the pros and cons of each option. Here's what we think might happen if you do this or that. Ultimately, it's still your choice. So the minister of the future in this AI-enabled cabinet office was being assisted by, in very much in the sort of intelligence augmentation school or augmented intelligence school, quite a complex AI who was advising on the implications of different choices, but the responsibility still remained with the human being in itself, right? And so we were forcing that as a dramatization that ultimately and this was of course a fictitious environment cast 30, 50 years in the future, where we might have super intelligent, quasi-sentient software agents. Even in that context, at the end of the day, governance and decision-making for anything requires accountability, right? And that's ultimately a human choice. As my boss likes to say, that you need one neck to choke when it comes to decision-making and having accountability therein, right? So that's how we were thinking that through. And of course, that's a bit speculative and a bit more long-term. But I know that His Excellency Omar Al-Alama, the Minister of State for AI and for Digital Economy and working from home, has been trying to operationalize those conversations and a lot of the policy work that they're doing and the educational work that they're doing. So we very strongly feel at the Dubai government level that ultimately, as Francesca and Uli have said, it doesn't matter how sophisticated your technology system is, there has to be someone who's responsible for taking that choice, or many people who are responsible for that choice. And just in the same way that we need to understand our algorithms biases and have explainability as to why decisions were made, so too, in a governance sense, should we hold those people accountable? Why did you make the decisions you made? And what decisions were made in that sense? So ultimately, it's part of the same conversation.
What if I often wonder this? What if we just turned over governance one day to AI? Because at the end of the day, a government is about making difficult decisions. There's for the greater good. There's as many winners as you can have. There will always be some losers. What if we turned it all over to AI and just said, look, we submit to whatever supercomputer it is. We submit to this. It's for the greater good. Maybe one day.
Well, we've done a couple of exhibitions about that exact topic, various levels of that. I mean, one of which was, would you let a super intelligent computer choose your job? And, we did a project based on Wendell Wallach's work, The Moral Machine, at Davos, exploring that. How would you calibrate a machine like a super intelligent machine learning algorithm to understand human preferences and morality? And in both those cases, the element of choice was essential, both from a learning perspective. So you were presented with a series of, the science fiction nerds amongst us might remember the Voight-Kampff experiment in Blade Runner, where it was a test which was given to AIs, basically to cyborgs, to determine if they were if they knew that they were real or not, if you were a human being or not. But the questions in the Voight-Kampff test are very bizarre. It's sort of like these situational contexts. You're driving to a meeting and you get a flat tire You can change the tire yourself, but you'll be late to the meeting and show up with dirty, no, you can change the tire yourself, but you'll have dirty clothes, you know, to this important meeting, or you can wait for someone to change the tire for you, but you'll be late. What do you do? Right? These are sort of ethical questions, moral questions, values questions, which seem quite oblique to things like job placement and jobs choice. But at the end of the day, you know, our own human matrix of values and decisions are informed by these kinds of social norms and personal preferences and things. So in both cases, one was more cynical and one was more optimistic. We basically had the machine polling you as a human being, trying to understand your values and preference matrix. And in one case, that was just done perfunctorily, because everybody, it goes along, you know, studies have shown that people will support a decision if they feel like they've been consulted, even if their consultation has nothing to do with the actual decision outcome, you know, for real humans. Whereas the other one was meant to be a little bit more dynamic. So, you know, look, these are art projects at the end of the day, but it's sort of applied art projects trying to understand how would people feel in this case. And what we found was when we asked people, would you let a super intelligent machine choose your job for you? 85, 90% of the people said no before they started experimenting with this. But then after they started experimenting with these two systems, around 60, 70% said yes, right? Because they had a positive experience in this simulated environment. Now, obviously, this is just a simulated environment, but I think as the capabilities of these systems become more robust, to the degree that it is able to pick better Netflix shows for us and provide us better things to buy and make us feel happier and more comfortable, we will, through human nature, feel more and more comfortable abrogating more and more responsibility of our own lives over to machines until it all goes horribly wrong.
I suppose so. That's a great point. I think, Uli, maybe you could tie what Noah was saying, those kind of examples, back into more of a, you know, business environment. Obviously, Microsoft Cloud and AI is helping businesses make, you know, not as fundamental decisions as Noah was talking about, but some pretty big ones. Do you have any examples of the transformative ways that Microsoft tech is being used in the real world today?
Yeah. I mean, there's, as I said before, there's great examples already being lived through various companies. Actually, for example, we have some great capabilities in the Middle East and Africa. For example, there's a retail company, Migros in Turkey, that actually is using AI, cognitive AI in this case, cameras, to watch over their retail stores and their retail product. And the primary aim is, of course, restocking, but the other aim is also making sure that the food continues to be fresh and continues to be updated, quote unquote, in order to make sure that we as humans don't eat the wrong food. Then we have a great example with water supply in Kenya, which obviously has challenges with water. So Upepo technology actually works with Azure capabilities to measure water, to avoid water loss. And so they're deploying smart meters everywhere and making sure that the water is turned off when nobody's using it and so forth. And again, those sounds trivial, but that's a really large problem that we're trying to solve. Then I've personally seen people use it for use AI for quality management, where human beings tend to look around and see if the, let's say, a car is done right. A camera can do this much, much better with AI built on top, saying, okay, is the, let's say, the seam between the door and the other side of the car perfect? If not, it needs to go back, because the earlier you catch an error, the cheaper it is to fix. Or you see steel production. If you, we have a company called Outokumpu in Finland that effectively uses, again, cameras to look over the steel when it's being produced, and they can see, based upon certain measures on the surface, if the steel is going to be perfect or not. If it's not perfect, it goes back into the process. So you effectively avoid waste, which is obviously something that we all care about. And these examples go on and on and on, because they're all around predictive maintenance, anomaly detection. So one of the things that, to augment what Francesca said, systems do actually monitor other systems today. We call that anomaly detection, where effectively we're looking at the normal behavior of the system And then we're looking at decisions or data that doesn't quite fit the normal norm. And we might not know what the issue for the anomaly is, but we do know that it's an anomaly. And then we push the anomaly to a human being who then looks at the data and says, oh, okay, this is the reason why the system made the decision, or this is why the reason why the production line behaved this way. And then the human being can make decisions to fix or to agree with the system and so forth. So from my perspective, we are seeing AI being incorporated everywhere, and it's going to go even further. I saw the latest Tesla news. I don't know if you saw that, Ben, where they actually are removing even the gear shift from you. So today in automatic cars, you need to make a decision going backwards or forwards. In Tesla automobiles, you will be able to use AI to do that. You can still override, but the AI is actually now capable of saying, oh, you want to go forward or you want to go backward and so forth. So I think we will see more and more of these kind of examples where the choices are being intelligently driven by AI with override capabilities, because we need to make sure that the human choice factor is still being supported. I think Noah's, if I look at Noah's arguments, a lot of it comes down to choice. As a personal thing, a machine that gave me advice when I was 16 would have not taken into account that I was tired of school. I really didn't know what to do. So I kind of went a path one, and then later on at 19 or 20, I changed my path and became a computer scientist. At 16, I would have not known what to look for. So from my perspective, I think human choice is still a large part of decision-making that machines really have a hard time with, because they don't look at fancy, they look at hard data.
I think that's great. And again, another optimistic answer there. It's my fault. I keep on trying to push a dystopian future on you all, but you all have very rational, very sensible, and very real examples of why that's not the case. But I'm going to try once more. So with our last question for each of you, to round off, to nearly out of time, same question to all of you. I'd like to ask you what excites you, but also what scares you the most about the future of AI in business going forward. Francesca, maybe you could answer that first.
So I just wanted to add one thing to the discussion that was done, in the previous about the previous question, that relates to the fact that really not only AI can help with in making sense of huge amounts of data, and human beings cannot, so that's helpful for the decision made by the human being, but also can help related to policy making or to decisions in general. For example, I want to mention this great achievement in that also shows the tight connection between IBM research and the product lines of IBM, which is the project Debater. The project Debater debates with a human being about the pros and cons of a certain policy or statement or whatever you want. So helps the human being understand whether that policy should be actually carry forward or not, discussing with the human being all the pros and cons. So that's something that started from IBM research and is already a product after a very short time. So that's something that shows really that we really want to help humans, not just with telling them, oh, I see this anomaly, of course, that's very useful, or I see this statistical correlation between these two features and so on, but also, okay, let's work together in understanding what are the possible positive and negative consequences of some decision that you may make. Then about what excites me the most is, I always say my ultimate goal, I think that the ultimate goal in general should be not to advance AI or technology. The goal should be to advance human beings, to advance society through the use of technology. So to me, that's my, hope, and I see that we are going a lot in that direction, that the technology can actually help us be more aware of ourselves, more conscious about our values, how we want to shape our legislation systems or our societies, our cultures, our interaction with other people, our other societies, and so on. So that's what excites me the most. See how to use the technology to improve ourselves. Of course, we have to be, like Noah said it very clearly, it depends on us. It depends on us not being lazy enough to just see that technology makes things easier, more, and so being, because yes, some people may, as Noah said, may say no at first. Do you want the technology to do that? But then they very fast go from no to be completely dependent on that technology. So we need people to be more aware of where is the right place to be in our life together with the technology. So it's not that it scares me, but I understand that it's the responsibility of people to find that gracious middle situation in our relationship with the technology.
So put humans first as a guiding principle. I think that's a good takeaway. Thank you very much for that, Francesca. Noah, over to you. Same question.
I'll keep it short. I think what excites me the most is, when you look at the reality of most people's lives, around half the world's population doesn't have access to basic healthcare, like dentists and basic diagnosis of things. And the similar levels of statistics are true for education and other similar activities. And so what excites me is, as one of my favorite AI quotes is from Democratizing Ai from DeepMind, that we promise to make intelligence abundant. And so that ultimately, if we start to think about AI and by implication intelligence becoming not just a commodity, but sort of a public utility level service, then you would be able to provide extraordinary leaps in human welfare for that part of the world's population that doesn't have access to dentists or ophthalmologists or these kinds of things right now. And that's the direction that we're going in. It's quite exciting, the ability to really make dramatic impact in people's lives who barely have access to basic levels of professional intelligence right now. The thing that scares me, though, is that requires a political economy that is based upon and committed to human welfare and care. And there is, sadly, that's not the case in many, many countries in the world these days, right? Certainly, even in the West, many of the conversations around political economy are focused on profit, on blame, on xenophobia, and on perhaps the denial or abrogation of our responsibility to tackle some of these collective problems, these problems of collective welfare. And so that scares me because, as Francesca's pointed out, and Uli has pointed out as well, this is this is a social challenge. It's a social problem, right? How we apply these tools is going to depend on whether or not we make everybody's lives better, or certain people ultra wealthy and multi-generational barons and empires. So the sad reality is, right now, from where we sit, there are not that many countries in the world which are committed to human welfare as their primary goal, and therefore the expectation is that these tools will probably get rolled out with a primarily profit motive first. But it's not a given. We can make a difference.
Ben, let me add one more thing to what I said that I think is needed at this point. So what excites me and has excited me also about the AI and in general technology is look at where we are right now, the pandemic that we are all living right now. 1 year ago, nobody even knew about this disease, about this virus, and how to tackle it. Now, I just got the first shot of my vaccine. It's amazing what technology can do to help scientists to accelerate the discovery of the solution of important problems for everybody, for the whole planet. So what can be more exciting than that? The use of the technology for things that really improve our life and our, survival on this planet also. So, of course, one has to do that responsibly, with the ethical boundaries, but it's amazing what the technology can do for our society, our life.
And maybe we take it for granted a bit, does everyone realize that, like you said, with the vaccines, the huge human and technological effort
that took is quite hard to put into words. So I think that's a very good point. Thank you. Uli, I'm going to give the last word to you with my same question and to wrap up with, if that's okay.
Yeah, so again, Noah and Francesca already talked about the opportunity for doing good and really tackling the world's tough problem. Climate change being the number one, the human health being the number one. I think Noah's point about half of the population effectively not having access to water, clean water and those kind of things, I think are important. But the other side is that at the end of the day, the technology will be everywhere. We have a computer on our hands. We will have a computer or compute in everything we do, and the opportunity to get advice, to get help at any point in time. My Apple Watch, if I fall down, will effectively call for help. Sounds trivial, but if you are an elderly person, that is certainly something that's very, very useful. Those kind of things are certainly positive. What scares me is the world community has to come together to really think about AI in a consistent fashion. It's no good if we have one side do this with AI and be very, very stringent and positive and fair and those kind of things, but other communities don't participate in the same governance model. And so I think this has to be a contract that we all agree to and that we all stand to. Yes, there are cultural differences that have to be understood and supported, but I think all up, we have to think about AI as a tool for good with human control, rather than some of the complexities that you have tried to get us to talk about. And that's certainly possible, but I hope with the positive impact I've seen from every country, from every company that we have acted with or interacted with, that we should be able to handle it, but it certainly is a risk that we have to keep an eye on.
Yeah. So a long but worthwhile journey at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Amen.
I think that's a great note, optimistic note to end our wonderful panel discussion on today. So Francesca, Noah and Uli, thank you so much for your time, and we will, I'm sure, reconvene in the coming months and years to see who was right. Thank you.
Invite us back in 5 years and we can have a great chat about that.
Okay, deal. We'll shake on it. We can't shake on it because this is Zoom, but maybe, a virtual shake on that. We'll do it then.
Exactly.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And that concludes the BIA and Wired AI Summit. We've seen how AI has the potential to fundamentally disrupt markets in the Middle East and how we'll increasingly be working side by side with machines. Many humans will be doing jobs that don't exist today, that we can't even imagine today. But as we've heard, the businesses of today must prepare for this nonetheless.